Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the official courtroom testimony from Day 14 of the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. No one in the courtroom was prepared for what happened next. When the judge called the next witness, a wave of disbelief swept through the room. All eyes turned toward the back as a tall, familiar figure stepped forward. It wasn't a music executive or a former protege. It was Brad Pitt, one of the most famous actors in the world. A Hollywood icon known for keeping his personal life extremely private was now walking into court, under oath, ready to reveal something he had hidden for years. What he shared would shock the courtroom and the public. He spoke of private showers in Diddy's basement, strange ritual dinners where no clothes were worn, silent agreements, hidden cameras, and a secret brotherhood he claimed he was pulled into without giving his consent. This wasn't about fame, it was about power and control. And, for the first time, Brad Pitt was ready to tell his truth. The courtroom fell silent. No one moved, not a breath, not a shuffle, just silence. When the judge said his name, Bradley Pitt, it didn't seem real. Even the court stenographer paused. Then the back door opened and in walked Brad himself. No entourage, no sunglasses, just Brad Pitt in a quiet gray suit, head slightly bowed, eyes unreadable. The movie star's swagger was gone. What remained was a man carrying something heavier than fame. He quietly took the stand, adjusted the microphone, and for a long moment simply breathed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, calm, and steady. "I never thought I'd have to talk about this. Not here, not like this." The prosecutor nodded gently and asked, "Mr. Pitt, when did you first meet Sean Combs?" Brad looked up and said, 2018, at an Oscars after-party in Beverly Hills. He described how Diddy came up to him, said he admired how Brad stayed private even while being so well-known. Brad laughed, but Diddy didn't. Then came the strange invitation. "You should come by my place sometime. Just us. Talk like men. Real men." Brad said he hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of him. A week later, he found himself at Diddy's mansion in Los Angeles. It was late at night. Diddy met him wearing silk pajamas and told him, "I don't believe in small talk after dark." Brad didn't know what that meant, but he stayed. He described the atmosphere as intoxicating, not because of alcohol, but because of how the house was designed. The hallways were dark, incense burned in the air, mirrors were placed at strange angles, and the music kept looping without ever resolving. "It felt like I was in a dream," Brad said. "A bad one. But I didn't leave." That night, something shifted in him. What happened after Diddy led him downstairs became the start of a pattern, one Brad would spend years trying to forget. "I told myself it was weird, maybe just his style," he said, eyes steady. "But it wasn't style. It was the beginning of something I still don't have words for." The room stayed frozen. No objections, no whispers. Just silence, as the truth finally broke free. Brad Pitt exhaled sharply, like the next words might rip open something he had worked hard to bury. "That first night he brought me into the basement," Brad said, glancing toward the defense table where Diddy sat, still and silent. "I expected a wine cellar, maybe a home theater, but instead, I found what I can only describe as a ritual. Space." He explained that there was a steam shower built into the wall, candles already lit, thick rugs and mirrors covering every surface. It felt staged, like a set made for something no one was supposed to talk about. Diddy handed him a glass of brown liquor and said, "You've made it. Now let's clean off the rest of who you used to be." Brad looked directly at the jury. I didn't understand what he meant until he started undressing. Then he asked me to join him in the shower. Gasps echoed around the courtroom. "I said no," Brad continued. He smiled and said, It's just water. Just trust." He didn't touch me. He didn't force me. But the pressure was there, heavy and silent. Brad's voice trembled slightly. I went in. I stood under the water with him while his house staff moved silently just outside the door. His family was upstairs. I remember that more than anything. His family was home. He clarified that nothing overtly sexual happened, but said the ET, emotional confusion and vulnerability made the experience even more disturbing. He whispered things like, "This is how kings reconnect. You're safe now, because you're with me." At that moment, I felt completely disconnected from myself. They stood under the hot water for nearly 10 minutes. No talking, just the sound of dripping water and Brad's racing heart. When they dried off, Diddy handed him a robe and told him to return whenever he wanted to, feel real again. Brad said, "I left that house and didn't sleep for 3 nights, but I still came back." His voice lowered. "Because once you enter that world, you don't walk out untouched. You don't walk out clean." The jury looked visibly shaken. Some spectators wiped away tears. On the defense side, Diddy's posture remained frozen, but his knuckles gripping the table had turned bone white. Brad Pitt sat still for a moment before continuing, his eyes locked on something only he could see. When he finally spoke again, his voice had changed. It was no longer haunted, just empty. "There were dinners," he said quietly. "Not at restaurants, not at premieres. They happened behind locked doors at Diddy's homes, in complete silence." He explained that the first invitation came wrapped in gold parchment. There was no date, just a time and a phrase written in ink. Come with nothing, leave with nothing. Brad arrived at the mansion, where he was immediately led through the kitchen and down a hallway he had never noticed before. He entered a room lit entirely by red chandeliers. A long glass table stretched across the room. There were no plates, no chairs, just the table and music. Classical, distorted, on a loop. Then Diddy walked in, wearing nothing, not a single piece of clothing. He motioned toward the table and said, "Lay down, breathe. This is communion." Brad paused, his face unreadable. "I didn't want to," Brad said, but he looked at me like it was already decided. "So I did." He described lying side by side with Diddy, both of them exposed, vulnerable, surrounded by mirrors. Neither of them spoke. No food was served. "We stayed like that for an hour," he said. "No talking, no eye contact, just the sound of our breathing." Brad said he tried to tell himself it was performance art, something abstract. He wanted to believe that. But after the third silent dinner, he started to notice strange details. He saw small black lenses hidden inside the light fixtures. Reflections in the mirrors didn't line up. That's when he realized they were being filmed. He confronted Diddy afterward and asked if it was some kind of production. Diddy reportedly smiled and said, "No one believes art unless it's archived." That night, Brad went home and searched every corner of his house for hidden cameras. Then he tore the mirror off his own bathroom wall. "I didn't know if I was being paranoid or finally seeing things clearly," he said, "but I knew I wasn't safe anymore." His voice dropped as he turned to the jury. "I wasn't being fed. I was being documented. And the worst part? He didn't know if he had been the only guest at those dinners, or just the only one who didn't want to come back." Brad's hands gripped the edge of the witness stand as he braced himself for the next part of his story. The moment he said everything changed. "It wasn't just the showers," he said quietly, "or the dinners. It was what came after. What Diddy called the pact." Brad testified that several weeks after the third dinner, a package arrived at his home. Inside was a single document, bound in deep navy leather with gold lettering across the front. It read, "Wellness Agreement, Private Communion Protocol." "I thought it was a prank at first," Brad said, glancing at the floor. "But the document was real. It had Diddy's signature. It had a notary seal. and it had Brad's name typed at the top. The contract outlined what Brad described as psychologically invasive terms. There were clauses that stated he was never to speak about the shared cleansing experiences, no discussion of the gatherings, no mention of the location, how long they lasted, or what was worn. One line stood out to him: "All silence shall be honored as consent." "I didn't sign it," Brad said, but that didn't seem to matter. Soon after, everything began to change. People stopped returning his calls. A charity deal he had been brokering with a tech company fell through, with no explanation. Then the rumors began. Whispers that Brad was unstable, in crisis, unreliable. And then the gifts started arriving. He described receiving a series of unsettling items at multiple properties: incense sticks soaked in a strange chemical, black, candles shaped like faceless human figures, and a single white feather sealed in glass. "I asked my assistant to trace where they were coming from," he said, "but there was no return address. Nothing." The final straw came during a rainstorm, when someone slipped a handwritten note under his gate. The paper was warped from the rain, but the words were still legible. "You're in the Brotherhood now. Don't break the circle." Brad paused and looked up. His voice lowered. "I don't know what they meant by Brotherhood, but I know I wasn't invited. I was taken." The courtroom felt frozen, like time had stopped. "People assume power is a choice," Brad said. "But when someone like Diddy decides you're his project, there is no choice, just a maze, and every door leads back to him." He looked directly at the judge. "I wasn't under contract. I wasn't in business with him, but somehow I was still owned." Under the courtroom lights, Brad Pitt's face looked pale. He shifted in the witness chair, tension building in the room. Then the prosecutor asked, "Mr. Pitt, did you ever try to confront Mr. Combs directly about what you experienced?" Brad nodded slowly. "Yes, once, in 2021. And this was just the beginning." Brad Pitt's testimony didn't simply reveal secrets. It ripped the mask off a hidden world built on silence, ritual, and psychological control. Behind the glamour of Hollywood and the polished image of power lies something far more disturbing: loyalty enforced through fear, intimacy twisted into manipulation, and a brotherhood that doesn't ask for consent. It takes it. But this trial isn't just about Diddy. It's about the machine that shields men like him, the silence that protects them, the voices that haven't been heard yet. If this is what Brad Pitt had the courage to say under oath, imagine what's still locked behind closed doors. The story is far from over, so stay locked in. Share this. Talk about it. Because the moment we stop paying attention, that's when they win.